you were talking about, the surveillance paradigm, and how like this inevitability, right? Like, oh, it's just the way technology is, and it's just going to increase. The surveillance is just going to, it's just going to get worse and worse. Um, and obviously, a lot of that's to do with like monopolies and proprietary software and things like that. And like you mentioned, the Silicon Valley, and the, big tech. Um, but I think the irony is the free community oriented side of technology is weirdly actually more ruthless and more natural. It's more nature like, right? So like, because the thing is, anyone can contribute, right? It's like natural, it's organic. Just like in a community, anyone can like help. If Joe wants to like take some buckets of water to somewhere, maybe I'll help you do the buckets, whatever, or you contribute in some other way. I'll cook the food, so when you get back and you're tired, you've got a meal, that sort of thing. But yeah, what's kind of funny is that it's highly competitive because the sort of in these communities, that because the ethos is like open, right? It's permissionless. That means anyone can compete. So there's more competitors potentially. Also, someone can fork your code. So if your idea isn't solid, if your project, product, service, whatever you want to call it, your code, if it's not good, right, and it doesn't stand up, someone's just going to fork it, make it better, and then their thing will win. And actually, it's unlike the sort of monopolized big tech, they have all the control over it, right? It's really hard to compete. But in the sort of like decentralized open source kind of world, it's the opposite. It's extremely easy to get involved. It's easy to make a competing product. And it's also easy to contribute. I think it has both ends of the extremes. It's like open and free, and there's people want to help and contribute and get involved and help and organize together. But on the other end of that, it's like if your project's shit, like it goes straight to the recycle bin. it's there's like think how many things have just been left in the dust on GitHub. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting that you touched on the evolutionary process, and it's also organic. The way I described it in the previous episode, I was just talking to the Nostr guy. It's kind of like this, like sort of proprietary software and big tech. They have this like narrow kind of linear path, like version 1, version 2, version 3, whereas open source software, where people can contribute and add things and govern, essentially that it's more like, as you said, like organic. It's like cell division. Like a fork is like a cell dividing, essentially, and it's a completely different evolutionary path. So it's a really good analogy. I really like using the evolutionary process as a analogy or metaphor. So and to speak to the trajectory thing of like why, like it's inevitable. And this also links to the imaginary thing. I'll give an anecdote first. I remember one of my first. It wasn't my first interaction with Linux, but I remember it was one of the mind-blowing interactions. Like I've had a computer in my room when I was 8. Probably learned about Linux at like 11, 12. Run like I'm not like an expert or anything like that. In fact, like I'm really bad with Linux. Like I'm not a great programmer or anything like that. I'm just like super nerdy. I got into computers. I got lucky. I was like always interested in tinkering and stuff. So obviously Linux Kit was like, oh, you can install a different operating system. There's like other operating systems. There's other web browsers. Oh, cool. There's other, all these things start to open up. But funnily enough, the one thing that like really broke my Linux cherry or popped my Linux cherry was like, my friend lent me his PlayStation. He had a PlayStation 3, and that runs on Linux. And back then, Sony was kind of cool. They were like, you can run Linux. There was actually, in the options menu, there was an option to install Linux on your PlayStation, which I thought was super dope. They removed it, obviously, in later versions. But that was super cool, man. That was like, wow. But anyway, I was trying to play some game, and like it was like some webcam, like you had to use a webcam or whatever. I don't know if you remember. They had like these silly like iToy. Do you remember the iToy? You ever heard the iToy? It was for like the old PlayStation.
I remember.
So it's like you play games with your camera basically. So there's one called like window cleaner or whatever. So you just like wipe the things off screen and you clean the window basically, and it scrubs all the mist off the screen, and then you've wiped the window and you complete the level. Anyway, I wanted to use a webcam, and my friend said, "Oh, just plug your webcam in." I went, "What do you mean? It's a PlayStation. I need to buy the PlayStation cam." And he goes, "No, that's not how the PlayStation works." And I was like, "What? What do you mean that's not? What do you mean I can just plug something? Yeah, you can plug a keyboard in as well if you want, and a mic. And it does. They don't need to be Sony mic. They don't need to be Sony products." And that just blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute. You can tell me I can connect like any of my existing devices. Not only is that super cool just because like it's cool that you can connect, you can like daisy chain these things, to daisy chain technology to make like almost a new technology in a sense. Not really making a new technology, but you can create something new. Because I might plug a webcam into the PlayStation that's no one else has, and that's a completely unique setup. I have the PlayStation that everyone else has, but my peripherals could be completely unique. So I've got my own unique setup. That's really cool. But it's also extremely liberating, right? Because I don't have to pay Sony or friggin' Apple for their proprietary, headphones or earphones or whatever. And like maybe I don't have the money, but maybe I do have a spare camera lying around. So it's quite liberating for just people in general. Like it's economically liberating. So I thought that was cool. And yeah, I just want to throw this in there because I think this is like probably a cool video. Of Amir had mentioned it. He talked about this like Unix documentary on YouTube. And this kind of coincides with what I was saying about the PlayStation thing blowing my mind. I watched the Unix documentary, and it gets to this part where they're creating a spell checker, I think, and so they're having to like cross check like the text in the program against a dictionary that they've already built, and then they explain this like idea of pipelines, and it just hit me. I was like, holy shit, this is like the DeFi money Lego block thing. I was like, but like 30 years ago. Like, this is the same thing. Like, literally, it's the same. It's not like, technically, it's not the same, but conceptually, it's Lego blocks building on top of each other. And then, you can go laterally or like horizontally or vertically. You can build all these things together. You can stick things together like Lego blocks. And yeah, so that just speaks to what you were saying about this trajectory. Like, most people I would imagine are exactly how I was. I was like, okay, if you have a PlayStation, you need the PlayStation webcam, you need the PlayStation keyboard and the PlayStation this. But that's actually not the case. We actually can create things where like technology, we can daisy chain things that we already own. We can connect them together to create new forms of technology. But like, yeah, I think that's sort of exactly what you were speaking about. Like, people don't have that example to draw from. It's just like, oh, we're screwed. That's just how it is. But actually, we could have this whole world of like interconnected technology, and like, information throughput, and just like, yeah, it's just a different world. And so I thought they were good examples, especially the Unix. Watch the Unix one, guys, if you're at all interested in this stuff. I think it's AT&T, was it? AT&T Unix documentary. Yeah. Look for that on YouTube. And just look at how they talk about the programming that they're doing and how they explain the super simple pipeline concept. And again, once you understand this stuff, you almost can't go back. Once you like see how good things could be, you realize like how shit Microsoft are and how shit Apple are, and actually how restrictive and how they basically rape you financially when you could have, like I say, like you could be using things that you already own to serve you. You could use the technology to serve you in different ways, but they don't allow that. But people just think that's how it is. Oh, well, the code's complicated. Like, of course you need the Apple display because like it has to work with the Apple stuff, and it actually doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think obviously that also relates to the design philosophy in DarkFi to sort of bring it back to DarkFi, the simplicity, and just the way that you can like build upon things.